Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's WBBA webinar, Gigabit City, Unleashing the Power of Connectivity and Innovation, brought to you by Omdia and broadcast by Informa. I'm Michael Philpott, I'm the Research Director for Service Provider Consumer within Omdia, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's speakers, download resources, share this webinar via social media outlets, and participate in a Q&A session that takes place at the end of this presentation. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. Toward the end of our webinar, we will ask you to provide some feedback via the survey widget found at the bottom of your screen. Please just take 1 minute to fill out this before leaving us today, as your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. Lastly, if you experience any technical problems, please click the help widget found at the bottom of your screen, or type your issue into the Q&A area, and we'll be glad to offer you one-on-one assistance. Now onto the presentation. Gigabit City, Unleashing the Power of Connectivity and Innovation. Discussing today's topic is Dr. Marcus Brunner, Chief Expert of Enhanced Broadband at Huawei and WBBA Working Group Chair, Huawei Technologies Switzerland. Kurt Rogers, Network Strategy Manager at Chorus, and Par Touré, Enterprise Risk Management to Quality Assurance, M&E at Gamtel/Gamcell. If you want to learn more about our speakers, you can find their bios in our speaker bio widget on your screen. And again, if you want to ask our speakers any questions, please use the Q&A area that's also on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, and so with that, we will start the presentation. And I just wanted to start by giving a very brief introduction as to why gigabit broadband services are so important to the social economic development of a country, and how gigacities can help in that development, not just from a city perspective, but from a country perspective as a whole. Because cities act as a hub of innovation, of learning, government, finance, industry, health services, and of course, retail. And it's critical really that all of these verticals adopt gigabit broadband technology for their future development. I won't go through all of these verticals, but just wanted to highlight a couple of examples just to show the point. So let's take Compass as one example. They're looking to accelerate their cloud services and applications to improve their enterprise efficiency. And it's important that they move to a single high-speed, high-quality broadband network for the office, security, and production. Governments around the world, of course, are looking to dramatically increase their efficiencies and looking to smart city technology to help them enable that. But it's gigabit broadband technology is certainly moving forwards that will underpin that innovation and technology development that will help them do that. And finally, final example, smart finance. They're looking for highly speed, ultra low latency networks as they move to cloud AI-driven applications and processes. Moving on to the consumer space, we often associate high-speed broadband networks with very advanced applications such as Ultra HD video and VR gaming. But in the consumer space, it's not just about entertainment. Many of those use cases that we talked about on the first slide are moving gradually into our homes. If we just take health as one example, as the burden on our national health and social care systems just continue to grow, then it becomes important that we don't just deliver high connectivity networks from institution to institution, but also from those health professionals down to us in our homes, so that we can access those professionals and the services they offer in the comfort of our home, allowing us to stay at home longer as we move into older age. There's many other use cases as well, education from home, working from home, etc. But it's the broadband technologies, the future broadband generations that will enable the development of applications and technologies that will enable those use cases and future use cases that we don't even yet know about as going forward. So with the demands on the network operators, of course, have been investing heavily in their core and access networks over the years. And by 2028, 70% of consumer broadband subscriptions will be over 500 megabits per second, approximately 45% on gigabit broadband services. But this is very much at a global level. The picture at a regional level can be very different indeed, especially, and then when you break down into country, the differences can get bigger and bigger. I think as a society, we've done a pretty good job, really, of connecting people. By 2028, approximately 80% of the world's population will be connected to the internet in one way or another, but it's the quality of that connection that's going to differ. And you can see from the chart here that the difference is actually only growing. The difference between those most advanced regions versus the more emerging markets is going to grow by 7-fold between 2021 and 2028. And that's at a regional level. At a country level, as I say before, the differences can be much, much larger. And what does that mean in practical terms? What it means is that those advanced applications and technologies that we talked about earlier that are going to help drive our future social economic growth will be readily available in those more advanced regions and countries, very much less so in those developing ones. And therefore, in terms of future growth, the danger is just they get left further and further behind if we don't do something about it. And that's why within the WBBA, we talk a lot about investing and rolling out fiber broadband networks, because they provide the most optimum and also the most future-proof of broadband infrastructures, not just in terms of delivering basic pure download speed, but also in terms of delivering symmetrical services, very low latency services, very low jitter, and also being proven to be the most reliable and most consistent, which will become very important as we move to more cloud-based, more interactive applications moving forwards. So you might be thinking, well, why are we not talking about delivering that type of technology to every home, to every enterprise? And certainly the World Broadband Association does believe in that goal, and we've written a lot of reports about that topic. But there are certain benefits of focusing, at least initially, on urban areas, because by 2030, 60% of the world's population will live in urban areas. And you can see that percentage is only going to continue to grow over time. And therefore, if you're looking to target, if you're looking to reach a high proportion of a country quickly, then the targeting the urban areas is obviously a reasonable strategy to take. There's other benefits as well. The economies of scale, because in urban areas tend to be more densely populated, the economies of scale mean that there's lower cost per customer, especially in terms of rollout and coverage, but also in terms of connectivity as well. We're not just talking about households, of course, in urban areas, often co-located with other institutions such as financial and industrial centers, things like more government, hospital, education facilities, et cetera, and they can also take benefit of the investment that's been put into those areas. And although very much at a high level, I think this chart kind of starts to show the point I'm trying to make here. You can see that what this is showing is the fiber to the premise coverage shown by the blue bar for each country or territory, and then the level of urbanization in that same country or territory. And you can see that for the kind of the top 30 countries in terms of fiber to the premise coverage, the difference between the fiber to premise coverage and urbanization is very small. In fact, in many countries, the fiber to the premise coverage is higher than the urbanization, suggesting that yes, in these countries, the focus should very much be on driving that fiber into more rural areas, as well as, of course, driving greater customer penetration. But you can see that as we go down the scale, especially as we move into the more emerging markets, then the difference between coverage and urbanization grows in some countries quite significantly. And therefore, by just focusing on those areas, then a country can quite quickly increase their level of fiber to the premise coverage. But what we found is that national broadband plans and strategies are often very much focused just at a national level, often ignoring the difference between those urban and rural areas. It's not always the case. There are some best of breed examples, and I've just shown a few on the slide here. If we just take the first two as examples, if you look at China, by the end of 2023, they had a target to build more than 100 gigabit cities in the country, and we all know that how fast China has developed in terms of gigabit society. And the next example is Thailand, which again is a great example of a country that's very quickly developed its fiber broadband technology and network, and it has a target by 2027 to deliver 1 gigabit broadband speeds in municipality, economic zones, public utilities, learning centres, as well as upgrading all the infrastructure in urban areas. And there are other examples you can see on the screen, and we would encourage all governments around the world really to look at these types of best of breed case study and look at developing similar legislation and regulations in their countries. Sorry, there seems to be a slide missing, but in the white paper there are a number of case studies which you can download and read in your own time. But we're lucky to have a couple of presentations today on a couple of those case studies that we have in the paper. So I will move on next on to presentation by Kurt. So I'll hand over to Kurt. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, hi, my name's Kurt Rogers. And the case study I've got for today is the largest city in New Zealand, Tamaki Makaurau, otherwise known as Auckland. You'll probably be familiar with that. Now, the case study here is quite interesting in that the New Zealand had a government public-private partnership called UFB, Ultra Fast Broadband. It's one of these national broadband initiatives. And that began in 2011. And it was very much focused on urban centres. So Auckland, one of the requirements was to cover every single premise within Auckland's urban area. And in particular, in the first 3 years of that rollout program, 100 priority premises, all schools and universities, all hospitals and medical centres, and all businesses were required to be the priority premises that were first covered. So 100% of those types of businesses, hospitals and schools, they all had access to gigabit fibre in 2014. The program in Auckland finished in 2019, and at that point, 100% of residential premises, businesses, hospitals, etc., had access to gigabit broadband. About the same time, that infrastructure, fibre to the home infrastructure, was upgraded with XGS-PON, which meant it was productised under the name Hyperfibre. So that also became available. So multi-gigabit services have been available 100% of premises in Auckland for the last few years. Rollout was completed in 2022 for that. The fibre uptake in Auckland, the success of that program, as of December 2023, 76% of residential and business premises had taken up fibre. 25% of those plans are on a gig or higher, and 800 gigabytes of monthly data usage is average. So it is now, as you can see, highly used. And there was one question I saw in the Q&A, which I will address right now, and that was really around we've had this network for a while, have we seen the social and economic benefits? And really, what happened in 2020 with COVID really proved to everyone in New Zealand, the government, businesses and everyone, just how valuable an investment this was. Because when COVID hit, went and had a couple of lockdowns, and with people needing to rely on their home broadband, everyone was very relieved having access to such a high quality, reliable and consistent infrastructure. So it sort of came at a perfect time, right when the program finished. really proving how valuable having such future-proof infrastructure was for a city. And post-COVID, of course, people are going back to work, but this created very much a permanent choice for people and for businesses in being able to do hybrid working and having so much more flexibility around that work-life balance. So I think that is one of the key things that's been very successful about having access everywhere. It really does give people choice, gives consumers choices, and gives business choices about how they, where they want to live and where they want to work. If we look particularly at the gigacity type measurements, Auckland ranks pretty highly, and we don't have the exact number of cell sites in Auckland that are connected by fibre. It's certainly the vast majority. But 100% of homes passed, the median broadband speed in Auckland's 319 megabits a second, and these numbers come from the regulator. They run a measurement program. The median broadband speed for the top 10% of households, 882. And like I said, every household, every industrial area, and every hospital and government premise covered. One of the interesting things about doing that type of program, where you mandate 100% coverage within an urban area, is you literally have fibre available down every street. And what that's enabled in the last few years is for that fibre infrastructure, started out as fibre to the home, fibre to the premises infrastructure, but over the last few years, it's been leveraged into smart cities. So that's really where things are moving now. That infrastructure, originally built for schools, businesses, hospitals, and premises, now being heavily leveraged by a range of what we call smart locations. So really popular bus stops, traffic lights, CCTV cameras. Particularly with CCTV cameras, that's often for traffic management. Like many countries in the world, like many cities in the world, Auckland has issues with too much traffic and congestion issues. And really having that connectivity available to do traffic management is really helpful. Digital billboards are another really key use case for that fibre to the home infrastructure. You can see right there the picture on the bottom right in central Auckland. There is a digital advertising company called Lumo that uses fibre to connect its billboards. And they find that really valuable. And of course, free Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi being a really key asset for a city. So I think this is a good case study about how when you can have that future vision, really make sure 100% of homes and businesses and premises within a coverage area have access to it. The proof in New Zealand is that you do get fantastic uptake, and then it can be leveraged for other things that continue to benefit the city, whether it's bus stops or digital cameras. So that's all from me, Michael. I think it's my turn to hand over to Pa.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Pa Toure, presenting a case study in the Gambia First Smart City in collaboration with TAP Africa Global. A smart city leverages cutting-edge technologies such as ICT and IoT to enhance living standards, foster economic growth, and streamline urban services. The WBBA Gigacity white paper describes the key characteristics of a gigacity, where gigabit connectivity is usually not only a step up from tens or thousands of megabits per second for achieving greater convergence when streaming videos or playing computer games, but is a fundamental driver and enabler of broader smart city initiatives. It focuses on meeting the needs of both present and future generations, promoting sustainability, efficiency, and innovation in all aspects of city management. Fiber connectivity is the main enabler for gigacities. GAMTEL, a critical enabler in the Gambia ICT ecosystem, in collaboration with TAP Africa Global, has deployed 72 pairs of fiber cable infrastructure for the provision of FTTP home pass across the first Gambia smart city, which includes 5,000 residents and hospitals, schools, and entertainment centers. The minimum home pass Gamtel is providing in the city is 10 megabits up to 40 megabits symmetrical connectivity. The aim of the project is to offer cost-effective and reliable broadband access to the entire city in alignment with the government's goal of transforming the Gambia into a technology-driven economy and society by 2028 and beyond by leveraging broadband technology and digital transformation to enhance social economic development. Thank you very much for joining us. Please download the Gigacity white paper. I will now hand over to Marcos.
Yes, I'm the WBBA Working Group 1 chair, which has sort of conducted that research. I would like to give, like, based on all that use cases you have seen now, try to summarize these things together. And we basically have developed the Gigacity criteria with a different set of parameters when we sort of can call a Gigacity a Gigacity. So that's basically my part of looking into that. So why are we actually doing that criteria? So it's basically about the connectivity being the foundation of any sort of smart cities. With that, it's a very important foundation, and people already argued about that in these talks here. And so why are we looking into cities or sometimes also regions? Because it's more and more a competitive advantage for businesses to have this Gigacity capability in their towns and cities. And if you want to need to provide public services more efficiently and accessible to everybody, the infrastructure need to be able to cope with that. So that was sort of the foundation why we sort of said, yeah, let's look into the criteria when a city can be called a Gigacity. So the first thing is about, let's look at the set of parameters. And you have already seen the measurement from Auckland on that. So basically the parameters are as much as possible technology neutral, not completely, but by and large. They are basically looking into something which is measurable, which is not always that easy to do. And basically it shows that it involves not a particular segment, but it's trying to capture all the different segments in a city. So it basically captures the involved homes, the mobile, specifically the mobile cell site connectivity, in industries and enterprises in like campuses and industry parks, governmental institutions like hospitals and other premises. So basically, these are the type of parameters which are measurable, or we believe are measurable. Some of them through some of our partners in the WBBA, which provide measurement data. Or you have heard, like in some cases, the government is sort of measuring this type of data. So all of those data is by and large available to basically say something about the capability of being a Gigacity. So then if you have this type of characteristics, which I just explained, we basically have looking into what is the metric, and basically have we can classify cities into 3 tiers, a bronze, a silver, and a gold tier. And we have defined, based on the use cases we just looked at, based on that use case, we basically show when a city is a bronze Gigacity or a silver Gigacity or a gold Gigacity. And you see it matters depending on the number of, or the percentage of homes passed, how many mobile cell sites are connected, what is the median broadband speed, what is the median broadband speed for the top 10% households. The reason why we have differentiated the median broadband speed and the top 10 households in that category is that it's relatively diverse if it comes down to different services, what type of speeds they are needing, and different applications have different requirements. So we sort of look into that there are a set of households in the city are able to do much more than others. And then actually a set of fiber connections to different, like the schools or the enterprises or the government premises. So this is sort of the characteristic metric we have defined. This metrics might actually change over time, and then if time comes, we probably need to update that. But for the time being, this is the level where we talk about. And again, this is sort of measurable in most cases. So since we talk about Gigacity, we basically, at the last part of this white paper, and you can download that white paper like from this platform or from the WBBA platform. Naturally, there will, at one point in time, the evolution towards a 10 gigacity being discussed. The 10 gigacity has naturally a lot of different values from a social, economic, environmental, and from a business perspective. So the technology for 10 gigabit city starts to be available, depending on the countries and vendors and so on. There are different technologies available on the customer networks, on the access networks, on the core networks, and on the data center networks. So those technologies start to be available or already available today. And naturally, further work on the demands and drivers for the 10 gigacity needs to be done. So these are things we're going to look into in a later stage if time comes to discuss this. With that, I give back to Michael. Thanks very much. And Michael, back to you.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you to the other speakers as well. So before we begin with today's Q&A session, please direct your attention to our webinar survey. It's available on the bottom of the presentation window. Thank you in advance for filling that out. Your participation in the survey always allows us to better serve you as the audience, so thank you. And now on to the Q&A portion of our event. As just a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, please just type your question into the text box located to the right of the presentation window, or click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you're not able to answer all your submitted questions during today's webinar, we'll be sure to share them with our speakers, who can then reply to you offline. So we'll start the Q&A. Please submit questions. We do have a few minutes for questions, so please put them into the box, and we'll try our best to answer them the best that we can. So I'm just going to go to the questions. There's a couple of questions for yourself, Marcus, coming in. There's a couple which are a little bit related, so I'll kind of ask in one question, but perhaps in two parts. So it's about the technology. We talked a lot about fiber and the need for fiber, and certainly in your characteristics that you talked about, there's fiber coverage, etc. But so there's a couple of questions about other technologies. Specifically, what about fixed wireless access as an additional technology for last line connectivity? And then also a wider question about just about other technologies other than fiber. So they're kind of those two related. So that perhaps tackle specifically on the fixed wireless, and then perhaps we could talk about any other technologies that you could see that could help.
Yes. Difficult question. So basically, we are focusing relatively largely on fiber. And the background of that is coming a little bit from other World Broadband Association activities towards fiber
networks. So we are focusing a little bit more on fiber than some of the other technologies. And the major reason is that fiber is, first of all, more future-proof than some of the other technologies. And second is much lower energy usage needed, much more energy, less energy needed if you use fiber technologies. So that's sort of the reason why we sort of concentrate a little bit on fiber. Now, when the sort of like switch over from other technologies to fiber is happening, it depends a little bit on the situation. So if you move from a copper fixed line to fiber, you have immediate power saving right away.
if you dismantle or do a copper switch off. Now, for the fixed wireless access aspect, it's very nice technology, very easy to deploy. However, depends a little bit on the capacity you have on the mobile network. If the capacity in the mobile network is a bit low, so if the bit in the air is usually much more expensive from an economic as well as from an energy perspective. And I'm not citing that here, but there are studies around like it's orders of magnitudes more energy needed per bit if you go like wireless versus you go by wire. So that's fixed wireless access has its role in certain scenarios. I think it has the bigger role in the more rural areas. So that's why we have not concentrated on that in a giga area. I mean, it's a urban city area is much more densely populated, where the return on investment for fiber is not that bad, and it's less costly to deploy. So that's sort of the reason why we concentrated more on fiber. I hope I answered all parts of it, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. There's actually a related question that's just come in, just to add on about the technology. Do you see demand growing from LOE broadband? Do you have a view on how this may grow?
Now, I have to admit, LOE broadband, I don't understand.
Yeah, I was wondering. I must admit, I was, while you were talking, I was wondering if they meant the light emitting broadband, as in using the light from like lampposts.
Light, so free space optics oriented.
I think so. I mean, perhaps if we could answer that, and
yes.
then perhaps the question can
exactly.
the question you can clarify if they didn't mean
so that one. Yeah. So the visible light or like light oriented communication.
Oh no,
free
sorry.
space light.
Sorry, they've just come back. They meant satellite broadband. I'm sorry, so it's probably me that confused you.
Leo. Okay.
Leo, yeah.
Leo satellite. Okay, good. now I get it. So satellite is a little bit the same thing. It goes over the air, which means it is a bit expensive in terms of energy and cost. And I personally believe the capacity, specifically for cities, if you look into several millions of subscribers in a very dense area, I'm not sure what the satellite technology today can deliver. Specifically, if we really talk about speeds, gigabit and above. That's why I also say at one point we need to think 10 gigacities. So if you look into gigacities, satellite things are I think for the city use case is not very good. I think again for very rural or extremely rural cases, there's a complete different story. I think there has these different types of technology have a good role to play.
Okay, there's a question which is quite a general question. So I was wondering whether Par or Kurt can perhaps also jump in on this one, and also I'll make some comments as well. Now, the question is, what are the current global trends for Gigacity, and any stats on how infrastructure can be developed in countries with limited access to fiber technology? Certainly, so I'll perhaps talk about the general trends, and I was wondering whether either Kurt or Par can perhaps comment on the infrastructure. How can they be developed, especially if it's areas with limited access to fiber technology? So in terms of general trends, I think more in general, we are seeing a development of the fiber infrastructure around the world, and certainly in those emerging markets, because they're moving to new types of broadband technology. They don't have to follow the same paths as the more traditional advanced countries. So they don't have to kind of deploy copper technology and then have to deal with that legacy and then move to fiber to the cabinet, then fiber to the home, etc. They can move to fiber first type strategies. So where we are seeing that developing that, and I mentioned Thailand was a great example where only about 5 years ago their broadband penetration was quite low, but they took a strategy to move to fiber first, focusing on urban areas to start with, and they very quickly ramped up in terms of their coverage and the quality of their broadband connectivity. And at Omdia, we have this fiber development index, and you can see that over the years they have very quickly gone up through the rankings because of that strategy, and there's many others like that. So I'd say that some general trends there that show how these more emerging markets can quite quickly advance if they have the right regulations and legislation behind them. So those are the kind of general trends we're seeing. I say I don't know whether Par, or I say Kurt, whether you can comment further, specifically looking at where countries have limited access to fiber. I don't know. Or Marcus,
well, Michael, I think, unfortunately, I think fibre is the answer. And certainly what we've seen in New Zealand is, just every single metric you can think about when it comes to performance, sustainability, reliability, consistency, long-term economics. Fibre just beats everything else hands down again and again and again. So I think it is very difficult to try and achieve gigacities without fibre, because really fibre is the key enabler. And I think you've commented about, you can go fibre to the cabinet or fibre to the cell site and keep moving. But I think you have to have a fibre first strategy, because I think at the end of the day, that is the only way to actually get the long-term benefit, start to deliver that long-term benefit. Because like I said, fibre really does beat. Now, in New Zealand, I mean, outside of fibre areas, because takes time to get fibre everywhere, there's always a role as an interim for other technologies, copper, fixed wireless, satellite. I mean, they all have a role to play for hard to reach, low density places where the economics of rolling out fibre will mean it'll take a lot longer. But I think it is worthwhile going back to the key point. I think fibre really, really is the answer in most cases.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
Michael, let me just add a word in here. Yes, indeed, fiber it's actually the technology, or the most reliable technology to provide gigacity connectivity. However, in terms of rolling out FTTX, I think from an operator perspective, there need to be a very good strategy, because it's expensive, and then considering time to roll out fiber, perhaps what we could do is like look at next generation fixed wireless technologies, where currently there are a lot of fixed wireless technologies out there that are complementary to fiber in terms of providing gigabit connectivity. So I think there are a lot of different variables that could be looked at in terms of enhancing connectivity, but ultimately fiber is the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. Stay on the line, because there's another question for you. You talked about your case study, but are there any specific legislation or government targets in Gambia focusing on broadband in urban areas or key sites?
Yes, there are strategies. As you may know, GAMTEL is a critical enabler in the Gambia ICT ecosystem. The ministry has defined strategies and policies to enhance connectivity across the country. And some of the policies, we have the National Broadband Policy and Strategy. And then there is also a digital economy master plan for the Gambia from 2024 to 2034 to enhance digital connectivity in the country. The ultimate goal of the government is to really leverage broadband and then ICT in promoting and then ensuring that there is inclusive and social economic development. So the policies currently that we have in the Gambia, you have the universal access policy, the national broadband policy, and also the ICT policy, which it's all geared towards enhancing connectivity across the country.
Great, thank you. Kurt, question for yourself. What has been Chorus's uptake success so far with XGS PON?
Well, initially when it was launched, there was a small but very enthusiastic initial uptake amongst early adopters. And there were particular segments in the business market, particularly around media production, TV production, software engineering, those types of small businesses really keen to get big fat pipes to the internet for doing their digital work. And of course you get the early adopters in the home, but it's been slow since then and it hasn't hit the mass market. And I think that is going to take quite a long time. There has been a general slowdown over the last few years in growth around bandwidth. A lot of the promises around some of the fancy stuff like virtual reality, metaverse, and 8K TV, they haven't come through anywhere near like the pace that people were predicting many, many years ago. So I think there has been quite a soft demand for XGS PON up till now, very limited to the early adopter innovator market. So it's going to be a while, I think, before that really moves into the mass market.
Thanks, Kurt. This question around the next steps for FTTX. So I'll make a start on this one, and then I was wondering, Marcus, whether you want to add anything afterwards. But so the question is, what about the next steps of FTTX, meaning FTTR, so fiber to the room? For this, the question says that you also need TVs or computers with fiber input as opposed to LAN sockets or Ethernet. Is there something on the way? So my understanding is, I'm not quite sure that that's quite true. The fiber to the room solutions that certainly that I've seen is mainly about providing a fiber backbone to every room of the house. And certainly, I do see a need for that in the future. For that type of technology. The issue with it is that it often requires, well, today 100% requires an engineering installation, and in many countries that can be very expensive. So a lot of the operators, even if they realize that perhaps the future of the home networking technology, they're still grappling with what's the return on investment on that investment. That's the issue with it. But I do see that we're going further in that direction. But going back to specific about the connection, about the connection to the devices, I say it's mainly used as a backbone technology. Then with a Wi-Fi 7 or similar device at the end of it, which you then use to connect your devices. So you end up with a kind of a Wi-Fi 7 access point in several rooms around the house with the fiber to the room connecting each of those. At least that's my understanding based on the solutions that I've seen. Marcus, feel free to correct me on that, but
yeah, that's basically you got it right. I'm here just at the ITUT meeting, like standardizing this fiber to the room technologies, and a large part of the discussion is on Wi-Fi plus fiber backhaul, sort of having a fiber to the room and having a Wi-Fi access point. And naturally, looking forward, I mean, people are talking about Wi-Fi 8 these days. There is millimeter wave oriented Wi-Fi solutions are in progress to be developed. So this thing says, so the belief is that within a room, radio is still okay. I mean, it's short reach. The higher frequencies, you basically keep the signals within the room, which has very good properties that don't disturb anybody else. So the belief is if you go fiber to the room, the last 10 meters is still wireless.
Okay, thank you. There's a question. I'll read it out. I'm not entirely sure whether we'll be able to answer it. Well, we might have to kind of answer it offline, but I'll ask anyway, Pa, and see if you can answer it. For the case of Africa, what are the transit corporations that bring undersea cable to the coast, helping to improve the quality of service for native users in landlocked countries, especially for African Peninsula, for example? You will find that the connectivity on the western side of Africa operates on a different undersea cable operations compared to the east or northern side. Is there a strategy to address this? Pa, is that a question that you can answer, or do we need to go back after the call?
Well, indeed, access to international cable is very important in the African continent. Recently, in the case of the Gambia, we've really been having a lot of issues in our submarine cable that's Africa coast to Europe, which is ACE, which connects several countries, including the Gambia from France. And currently, the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, in collaboration with the World Bank, it's working on having another second landing station in the Gambia, which is very, very important because for the past couple of years, we've been really relying on only one submarine cable, that is the ACE. But about 2 years ago, GAMCHEL management, in collaboration with the ministry, has also tried to provide another backhaul for the Gambia, because given that when there is outage on ACE, the country it's affected. So I think it's also affected some other countries. The ACE issues has also affected Ivory Coast and then other countries that are connected to that. So I think it's very important that from the regulatory operators and then government to collaborate and then see how best they could really work together in collaboration with the international providers to ensure that Africa is really connected to different submarine cables. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pa. Marcus, there was a follow-up question on the question about fixed wireless access. Again, I don't know if we're able to answer this directly on the call, but the question is, the question about fixed wireless was specifically around non-GSM technologies, such as those deployed by Radwin and Tirana. That's something I'm not so familiar with. Marcus, I don't know whether you're able to comment on that.
Yeah, I would say from a fundamental perspective, it's like wireless, as also Kurt is mentioning. Wireless is a good technology if you don't need to reach too many people. Now you can naturally have, like, the nice thing about GSM-oriented technology, the mobile network-oriented technologies, that in many cases there's the infrastructure for mobile is already available. So you just basically save that. If you have sort of other technologies where you have antennas and receivers, I mean, you can basically optimize for certain use cases. But I still believe the basic comment holds. For cities, I don't believe this is wireless, reaching wirelessly into the homes and the subscribers is not the best way to do. There's nothing around fiber. In rural areas or in special situation, all these type of technologies have a role to play.
Okay, great, thanks. Kurt, a question for you. Said Michael mentioned the socio-economic benefits of gigabit broadband. Given that Auckland has had such capabilities for some time, would you say, or is there any evidence of such benefits?
Well, I did mention earlier with COVID, I think many years ago, probably a decade ago, I don't think many people would have said that broadband was an essential utility. But really, the lesson from COVID pandemic and lockdowns and people being able to continue to work, continue to learn, continue to socialise during that period of time really did teach at least people in New Zealand that broadband was indeed an essential utility. And so I think that's very much what's in people's mind at the moment. It's an essential utility, just like water, like electricity. And so that brings the social benefit, and the ubiquity of it and it being so essential is quite critical. The other aspect which we've seen recently, last year we had a very large cyclone and a whole series of floods. So the weather in New Zealand is getting a bit crazier, having torrential rain and cyclones more often. And last year when we had a major flood in Auckland, the largest ever flood, the fibre network performed excellent. Now, one of the key things around resiliency there is the passive nature of fibre. Because the fibre to the home network requires no power in the outside plant. So we have small underground cabinets containing optical splitters. There's no power. If they flood, no problem, the service keeps working. Copper networks, fixed wireless networks fell over because they lost the power supply for the outdoor cabinets and the cell sites on hills. So we're certainly seeing in New Zealand a trend towards more bad weather. And this sort of is the flip side to sustainability. Not only is fibre the most energy efficient technology, it is actually the most resilient to the changing weather profiles. And again, when these types of events happen, whether it's pandemics or whether it's cyclones, you need something that's reliable, and everyone relies on their connectivity. So I think, to me, they are the main social and economic benefits that come from having ubiquitous fibre available everywhere. It's just, as a society, as an economy, you are far more resilient to anything that is thrown your way.
Great, thanks, Kurt. One final question, at least from where I can see, more of a general question, so I'll just throw it out to the audience. Sorry, to the panel, I should say, sorry. How do you see the generative AI technology will interplay with broadband connectivity technologies? Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, let me give a first try. So generative AI technology usually needs quite a bit of information. Specifically in the learning phase, you need a lot of information. So if you look into cities, if you learn, you basically acquire a lot of information from the cities, from various, I'm saying sensors, cameras, and so on, or whatever you want to sense. So the basic foundation for AI in whatever form will be a lot of information needs to transport it from where it's sent to where it's computed. So now, no matter exactly what the application of generative AI or AI is, the shipment of information is needed. And for that, I think broadband networks and fiber broadband networks are a foundation before we can do a very good AI-oriented application, specifically in a city and a smart city context. Thank you.
Sorry, Marcus. The fixed wireless access topic isn't going away. So another question related to fixed wireless access: the 6 gigahertz point to multi-point technologies have emerged recently and has allowed for urban gigabit connectivity. This technology is more suited for urban environments and allows very quick gigabit over-the-air type solutions. The company's been using these to connect business parks, which were excluded from the national broadband rollout by the national government, by the Irish government, I guess, which makes perfect sense. Do you have a view on that type of technology?
Yeah, I think I can repeat pretty much the same thing. Yes, I mean, it's said exactly here. That's exactly an example. It's sort of urban case where it's sort of an intermediate case, probably Kurt would argue. It's an urban case which is not yet connected by fiber, but I don't think it's at large the urban use case. There are always cases where this fixed wireless access technologies are suitable. The higher gigahertz bands are naturally have higher capacity, but you have lower reach. So you need to have more antennas, and you usually need the antennas to be backhauled by fiber as well. So fiber doesn't go away, be it a backhaul of the FWA antenna with whatever technology.
Yeah, thank you. I think we could just squeeze one more in. But Kurt, be prompt with your answer. So this is to you, Kurt. Is New Zealand thinking of using broadcast technology in case of floods and climatic issues?
Not that I'm aware of. I think satellite is a great backup, and that's definitely something that we've used in a cyclone last year. Of course, you really do need fibre to every community and fibre to the home where possible. I think, and I don't specifically know what this person's question, which particular broadcast technologies, but definitely I think satellite is whether it's Starlink or whatever, I think is fantastic as a backup in case of emergencies for these types of things. So as I think we've been saying earlier, and Marcus was saying, as well, I think satellite, wireless, all these other technologies are very useful for point cases. And the previous question about 60 gigahertz, that was actually something we actually had a look at that a couple of years ago, and we found it was very, very useful in very isolated use cases. Unfortunately, Auckland's got subtropical evergreen trees, and so it doesn't really work when it rains, and it doesn't go through those trees. So it became an issue where it would work in very, very limited number of cases. And so we abandoned actually deploying it because we couldn't guarantee that we would have to roll fibre anyway to some of the places. So it didn't end up working out.
Great, thank you. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. I'd like to thank all the great questions that have come in. If we didn't get round to answer your question, I can see that there's more questions still coming in, but unfortunately we are out of time. So I'd like to thank the audience for the great participation. I'd also like to thank Marcus, Kurt and Pa today for both your presentations and for your answers to those great questions. The WBBA really appreciates your time and your expertise on today's topic. Again, I'd like to thank the audience for sticking with us and for putting those great questions to the panel. For those questions that we didn't get answered to, we will reply via email after the call. Within the next 24 hours, you will receive a personalized follow-up by email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Please feel free to invite your colleagues, peers, etc., who may not been able to listen to the event today. The webinar is copyright 2024 by Informa, and the presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by the WBBA and Omdia, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. On behalf of our guests, the WBBA and Omdia, I'm Michael Philpott, and I'd like to thank you for your time and have a great day.